welcome to another version of Monday Night Therapy. My God, we need it this time, don't we?
Yeah, I'd say we do, though. I'm not sure that you and I have the capacity to meet everybody's needs tonight, John. We're good, but yeah, there's a lot of chins dragging, a lot of I don't know. I think the biggest thing that concerns me is it seems like apathy is setting in a little stronger right now than what I would have hoped we'd see. That part of it's frustrating. So we have a challenge in front of us, though. Though Aaron says, let's just skip the Michigan review. Well, Aaron, this is what John gets paid to do. John gets paid very well to review these games. So we need to review the Michigan game, despite the pain and agony that have brought so many of us.
I don't get paid well enough for this shit. Come on, not that. I think thing is what?
You are a T-shirt selling king.
Yeah, but not this year. You know, Todd, you don't sell T-shirts when your team sucks. Nobody buys shit.
I suppose that's true.
Now, wait a minute. Rudy Luna comes in firing with you guys are pathetic. There's really no context in this. What
is Rudy talking about? Is it you and me that are pathetic,
I don't know.
Jeez.
I think he's talking about today's politicians, and everybody can agree with Rooney that you guys are pathetic. That's absolutely are pathetic. And then Seth Floyd, nothing to be ashamed of for Nebraska this year, was really to evaluate what was there to carry over for the next 2-3 years. I hope that is kind of the attitude that a lot of people have because, this is how it goes. This is how it is. And Rudy Luna comes back as Seth. It's been 20 years. How many more can you tolerate? It hasn't been 20 years. Bo Pelini had some decent years in there that were fun. Yeah. I mean, come on, stop making this shit worse than it is. It's the first year of the coach, and it's like his fifth game. And if you don't look at it from that attitude, you're really going to be miserable. And honestly, you should probably just stop watching football until we get good again. And I do believe we're going to get good again because I think Matt Rule's a good coach. Yeah, there's a lot of I know.
I tell you what, I realize that there are some people that are unable to separate what took place with the previous coach and the previous couple of coaches, at least. Let's be honest. Who had Nebraska at this point in the season any better than 3-2? I mean, did anybody seriously think Nebraska would be better than 3-2 at this point? And those people that were picking Nebraska to be 3-2 had no idea how good Colorado was going to be. And so, we're one game off of that. And if anybody honestly thought going into the season that we were going to beat Michigan, you drank way, way, way too much Kool-Aid if you thought that was possible. Now, what was frustrating, John, you've nailed it 3 or 4 times. I think what was most frustrating to me about the Michigan game on Saturday was Nebraska's team didn't show up mentally prepared to play that game.
They didn't look like it.
They didn't, it looked like the attitude was kind of like, well, let's get through this. If we can get through this today, then, we've got the rest of the season in front of us. But in the meantime, they got their asses kicked and literally got.
How?
Yes. That was as much of a beating as I've seen in a methodical.
Yeah, it was. It was very robot-like.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to hand it to Michigan. I mean, they came out on the field and then they just said, "Hi, how you doing?" and just fucking ran over us. I mean, like repeatedly, like getting backed up and ran over again and then again and again. Okay, Joe Higashi legit leg kicks says, I just clicked on that one. He wants you to do the truffle shuffle because he says you still owe him one from that Colorado loss.
I don't know, Joe shit. I
Yeah.
never said I was going to do the truffle shuffle. I don't even know what the damn truffle shuffle is. So
I think it's where you buy truffles and you pass them out to your friends.
okay, I'll do that. I'll do that. So, yeah, you know, the attitude in the stadium. I was at the game. You know, it was the fans were not the fans weren't popped
No.
up or you know, fired up. It was just kind of a downer day.
You were at the
And
game.
yeah, there was not a lot of excitement in that stadium.
You know what the
Period.
fucking deal was, Todd?
What was the deal?
Taylor Swift didn't show up to see Heinrich Harburg.
Well, I think that's probably, I think there was a lot of disappointment among the fan base that was convinced that Taylor Swift was going to be there checking out Heinrich Harburg. And yeah, I would say you're right. Now, they did play a Taylor Swift song at halftime. You know, so, and my
Are you going to tell him that you heard from somebody who actually believed that rumor?
I had two people come up to me, one at the tailgate that I was at before the game and one in the stadium, who came up to me and said, "Hey, did you know that Taylor Swift is going to be at the game today?" Yeah, I had two people tell me that.
Oh, Lord.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
It was, I think I mentioned it in the post-game video I did, that it was the least amount of buzz I think I've seen for a game since I've been doing CornNation, and that is about 17 years. And you know, maybe that's not true, but it was certainly not buzz like. I mean, you could go out on the comments section on Facebook for all the media things. That's normally what I look at. Twitter was dead except for the regular guys like me that are out there trying to poke people into responding to things. I mean, it was it was pretty dead. And then the game, the game showed it. I just no lack of fire, lack of real, a lot of lack of energy. That's what I saw.
Yeah, I
I
even
mean,
sensed it, you know, on the pregame stuff. I mean, with the media and whatever, it's just hard to. I guess hopefully it's kind of an enigma, kind of an outlier. And I think where we got to, you know, go away with, or what we go away with is that, you know, we were exposed. Nebraska was definitely exposed, and we are quite a ways away from being able to put a high caliber football team on the field. And you know, we can pick up, we can look at position groups, but you know, one of the things I think that we need to acknowledge is it's pretty much across the board. You know, Rod D says not sure guys like Bullock or Heinrich Harburg would start on another P5 team. Good kids, I'm sure, but not going to get many wins in the current with the current personnel. Well, I think we'll get some wins with the current personnel, but we do definitely need to upgrade. And ask yourself this question: how many Nebraska players that were on the field this weekend, how many of those players would make the two deep at Michigan? And, you know, people want to say, you know, there's this big argument. Well, we've got talent. We recruited talent. We recruit, you know, all sorts of talent. Well, how much of that talent has stuck around? And what do we have for depth? Because, you know, you've got to be, we're trying to build depth. I mean, Coach White is running 20 guys out there playing defense to give them some experience. You know, that's how you build depth. So those things are being done. And, you know, I thought it was really interesting listening to the post-game show with Coach Rule, and I'm sure many of you heard it. But what really struck me was one of the journalists he asked the question. So, Coach Rule, what do we need? What do you need to do, or what does the staff need to do to move this program forward, to make this program competitive? And Coach Rule's response was, "I'm not going down that road today." And you know, that spoke volumes, because he is committed to this team. He loves these players. He's gonna work as hard as he possibly can, he and the staff, to have success this year. But the unspoken truth is he needs more players, and he needs more high quality players. and he's going to have to figure out how to get those people on campus and
What was that?
develop.
What was that line? I don't mean to get political, but what was that line years ago? I think it was Storm and Norman Schwarzkopf that said, "You go to war with the army you've got, not the one you want."
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Well, that's the army we have. I mean, we don't have a lot of playmakers or almost zero on offense. And, I keep seeing people commenting that Marcus Satterfield should be fired. The offensive line coach should be fired. The receivers coach should be fired. I mean, and I saw where
fire all these coaches after 5 games.
Sam McCune wrote about how they didn't have any offensive identity and they're trying all sorts. Well, I said that in the post-game thing. We don't have an offensive identity because we don't do anything particularly well, and you can't build around something where you don't do something well. Offensive identity doesn't come just because I want it to. Like if we're going to run the option just because I want them to, or I think they should, that's not an offensive identity. So, this is a tough year, and it's going to be tough. I mean, we got Illinois coming up Friday night. Thank God the rest of the Big Ten West is just a shit show. Holy cow.
Well, Illinois got their backs up against the wall too, because they certainly have not lived up, to the expectations that people had for that team. And they got their butts kicked by Purdue. So, there's 2 teams on Friday night that have a lot to prove. And Coach Rule, I'm basically recapping his press conference after the game. Coach Rule says, we will all find out what kind of a team we have on Friday night. And, I would expect Nebraska is going to come out fired up to play. I would expect that we will see a different mindset, from the team on Friday night. And hopefully, we can punch Illinois in the mouth because they're going to try to punch us in the mouth. But hopefully we can punch them in the mouth right away and make a statement and, have some success and come out with a W from Illinois.
MK says Todd is looking dapper tonight.
Yeah, well, I had to look good for my peeps today that I had to go out and visit. So
Did I put this one up? Mar Nab says John deserves rehab funds for the tree in the bathroom. I do, especially for the bathroom. My God. Of course,
you just need a maid.
You know what? No, if I make it too nice, other people will want to use it, which is why I leave it the way it is. Jack the Ripper comes in with Taylor Swift is our latest clown show scam. She has all the talent of a wet fart. She sings nice pop songs. They're fun. They, people like them. She doesn't come out in public saying stupid things about politics so that everybody can get angry with her. As far as I know, I don't follow her that.
Oh, no, she's taken a new position. She had a conversation that was recorded with her dad. And,
oh my God.
Taylor Swift, the people on the right hate Taylor Swift because she is not a fan of their clown show. So,
oh my God. Well, that's all over then.
Yeah.
Cilantro says, why did Husker fans walk out of Memorial before halftime? One of the things I could tell you is that I was watching the game, and during the game, we have a Slack. We communicate internally with Slack. And Aaron, one of our baseball guys, literally was posting in Slack that people around him kept passing out and fainting.
He had, but by just shortly after halftime, there'd already been 3 people near him that had passed out. The temperature on the field at game time was 130 degrees. Air temperature at kickoff was somewhere around 94, 95 degrees. There was a little bit of a breeze, but if we hadn't been sitting in the shade, our seats are in the shade up underneath. Had we not been there, I'm not sure we would have stuck it out much longer than halftime, especially when your team had not done anything positive in the first half. There was not one thing positive that you can hang your hat on that Nebraska did in that first half.
Paul says, do you think Rule's staff is the problem? Oldest individual teaches special teams and is poor. We have a 24-year-old coaching wide receivers to go in the Big Ten. No, I'm not sure how to handle this. Why? When we hired that other guy and we let him stick around for 5 years, There are constant cries about we're firing people. We can't get anywhere if we keep firing people. We can't do anything if we're just going to fire, fire, fire. No, I don't think Rule's staff is the problem. I think they're trying to make the most of what they got. We still have an offensive line that isn't purely functional. We don't really have a functional quarterbacks. We've lost two of our best running backs. There's not a lot to do on offense. I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, I don't.
Other than
we're gonna fire coaches. We're not. I mean, no, I'll turn it around. We are not going to fire coaches 5 games into the season. I know that Rule will do an evaluation at the end of the season, and if he thinks that there's a coach that wasn't, pulling his weight, he'll move him on. Marcus Satterfield, we heard from South Carolina fans, glad you got him. However, South Carolina's offense this year has certainly taken a step back with the same quarterback that they had last year with Satterfield. So, maybe Satterfield was a little bit better at South Carolina than a lot of those fans want to give him credit for. So I refuse, to do an autopsy on this program 5 games into the season. I don't think
before it's dead. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, we got Cilantro coming in here. The only reason why Donovan Raiola was retained was because of Dylan, and now that he's committed to Georgia, why is Uncle Donovan still on the staff? Well, because you need an offensive line coach. You don't. Matt Rule gave his reasons for keeping Donovan around, which is he teaches a certain way of blocking, and that's the way Matt Rule wants it taught. I think that, the idea that he was going to keep him around just to get Dylan, I don't know. A lot of people said that. I don't know if it's true. If he doesn't think that Donovan Raiola has done a good job, I suppose at the end of the season that we'll find a different guy to coach offensive line.
That, and the other, you've got to take the conspiracy one step further.
What's that?
So they didn't get Dylan Raiola. He's got a brother, Dayton. So you've got to keep Donovan Raiola around if you want any chance of getting his younger nephew. I mean, if we truly kept Donovan Raiola around to try to get his nephew to commit to Nebraska, then we just as well keep him for 2 or 3 more years to get the other nephew, if that's what you believe.
Oh my God. We're going to have to figure out some way of doing like some kind of production thing because we have a shit ton of comments.
Here's one that I think is kind of interesting. Stop. Nobody thought Nebraska would beat Michigan, but 3 Group of 5 schools were more competitive against Michigan and Ann Arbor than we were against Michigan and Lincoln. You know what? They didn't put the dogs out against those teams. Michigan came to Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, they did.
And they unloaded both barrels. They were playing with one hand tied behind their back at home. And because they knew that thrashing those teams wouldn't make near the statement as it would on a nationally televised game against Nebraska.
Okay, what else? Okay. Do you know if guys, Marnab says, do you guys know if Sims is injured? Well, he's dealing with a high ankle sprain, and everybody will tell you those take a while to heal. I guess we're going to find out Friday night, if he starts against Illinois.
Well, I don't think he'll start. I think Heinrich Harburg has done enough that he needs to be considered the starting quarterback. And Jeff Sims will come off the bench when he's healthy at this point. Seasons take twists and turns. And if Jeff Sims was healthy, I think we would have seen Jeff Sims in the second half on Saturday. Because Harburg wasn't getting anything done.
Cilantro says, if I hear another go blue from those Michigan twats, I swear to God, I'm punching a guy. Yeah, that's what we need is violence. Well, we don't.
I think we should take a poll, and you guys can chip in here and express who do you think is more demented, John or Todd, and then we'll I don't know, we'll toast each other. We'll toast the winner about
Todd,
who's. Well, I probably am. I probably am more
Todd,
demented.
no, I have a question for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think Nebraska has a problem of not knowing how to win?
Yes, I do.
Okay, tell us about your theory.
Um, well, first of
Before he
all,
starts this, you need to preface this with the idea that Todd coached in high school. Todd was a principal. Todd's had to deal with behavioral stuff for most of his career. So there you go.
well, yeah, and I've spent a lot of time with coaches and around coaches as well, and so I guess to try to establish some credibility. I don't believe, and I'm going to kind of come through the back door on this. I don't think that Coach Rule completely understood the mindset of the Nebraska football team. And that mindset of the Nebraska football team, in some respects, is kind of like the mindset of a portion of our fan base. But that's for a different time. The football team, when you think about how many games in the last 2 or 3 seasons that Nebraska lost by 1 score, what sets in is that mindset of when's it going to fall apart, or when's it
Right.
what's going to happen now? We're ahead and there's 3 minutes left in the game. What bad thing is going to go, take place? And that's part about knowing how to win. And when you face a team like a Michigan that is so dominant, if you don't come out and play with a high level of emotion and just challenge them, and maybe I'll put it this way, it was kind of like Colorado did to Nebraska, because there weren't very many people initially that thought Colorado was going to beat Nebraska.
Right.
And Colorado came out and said, F you, you're playing on our field. And, think of all the penalties that you saw early on and all the trash talk. And I'm not an advocate of trash talk, and I hate it. But the same idea, though, is that Colorado says, you're not going to come in here and push us around. And I did not sense that at all with Nebraska on Saturday. And when Nebraska gets in games where they're competitive, they have to have that mentality that we need to win by more than where we're ahead right now. We've got to continue to play to the final buzzer and let's score more. That needs to happen.
Yeah, for years we talked about like Scott Frost teams where they would go out onto the field, and if something bad happened, then they just kind of melt. And I think that, the same thing I don't know if the same thing is true, but I mean, the Michigan game certainly started out really, really crappy. And then it really there was no life after that. It was like the defense said, well, you're going to kill us. Go ahead and kill us.
No, I think, though, Cilantro might be on to something here. Cilantro says, should have added a photo to the What If Nebraska Hired Jim Harbaugh article. Ye hath angered the football gods. Yeah, there is no question at all. John is in charge of CornNation. And the fact that he opted to run that article, I believe, has something to do with the outcome of the game.
It does.
I don't think you can run away from that, John. You maintain, you have some responsibility there.
Well, if you read some of the YouTube comments I get on a lot of these videos, you swear to God that I was destroying half the planet. Okay. Well, but go ahead.
No, there was something, again, I think it's time to look ahead. And that we all get tired of that. I mean, don't get me wrong. For those people that are tired of hearing we have to have patience, I get it. For those that say, we've heard all of that before. But we have to center ourselves, and we got to come back to the fact that this is the first year with this coaching staff. And it isn't a continuation of the same old, same old. I think maybe what is most telling is, the former guy was all too quick to point his fingers at Mike Riley. And, he complained into year 3 and year 4 about the culture that was left behind. And he whined and he complained and he pointed fingers. I haven't heard that from Coach Rule. Coach Rule is moving forward. And I'm not here, just trying to kiss Rule's ass, but I think that we need to try to hold some things into perspective. Sure, we're disappointed. I'm disappointed. I would have liked to have seen that team. I wanted to jump up and yell and scream, and hopefully in the fourth quarter we had a shooter's chance of winning that football game. It was very frustrating. Fred Sacco says, serious comment number 2, Rule seemed low-key pissed after the game. His whole, you'll see who this team is on Friday night, come watch, was telling. I liked it. And Fred, I did too. I think that's one of the most telling statements that Coach Rule's made. Now, John, did you see his press conference today? I heard that he was pretty animated in his press conference today.
I didn't see it. I saw the comments. I think that somebody had asked him, oh, come on. Somebody asked him a question. Well, you said that. You just said that. And he wasn't going down the road of what does this team need to do to be competitive?
Yeah.
You know what's kind of funny is our media guys are treating this completely different than they did the last 5 years too. I mean, they're much more combative than they ever were. And I guess there's no shock in that. We know how these people, Matt Rule isn't a Nebraska quote. He's not a Tom Osborne guy. He's not a Nebraska guy. He's fair game for those guys to beat up, I guess. Yeah. We already did that one.
Yeah, we already did that, didn't we? I think this is an interesting comment. Joshua Fleek should get more carries for sure. Well, he was listed number 2 on the depth chart that was released this week at running back. And, again, comments were made after the game that going to have to give him a closer look. My hunch is that Fleeks is not a strong practice player. And, the coaching staff is kind of at that point right now where, they have given players playing time because they worked their butts off in practice. They've rewarded those who put forth effort. And, there are some very talented players. And, you'd like to think that by the time they get to college, they all have a very strong work ethic. That's just not true. There are players that take time off in practice or don't put forth a full effort. And rumor has it, I don't know this for fact, but rumor has it that Josh Fleeks, he did not get to come to the opening of fall practice because he reported overweight and they sent him home. And so Joshua Fleeks had to kind of dig himself out of the doghouse. So maybe he's where they expect him to be now, and he'll get some more carries.
Interesting. He moved to running back, and then he's ahead. Immediately ahead at Emmett Johnson's got to be a little bit disappointing. It is to me. I wanted to see Emmett Johnson play well.
I wanted to see Emmett Johnson too. I was really hoping that he'd get some carries and have some success, but that wasn't in the game plan apparently. Hey, we did see an option pitch. We did see for a 1-yard gain, I think. So anyway,
well, Illinois comes up Friday night.
Yeah,
in Champaign, Illinois. They just got beat all the hell by Purdue, which is shocking in itself.
Tell us, John, why does Illinois' defense, which was incredibly solid last year, why does it suck so bad this year? I think that's one of the surprises of the Big Ten, that Illinois' defense dropped off so much.
Well, because their coach, their defensive coordinator, Ryan Walters, went to coach at Purdue.
Yeah. So,
Let's look this up real quick. Ooh.
well,
Illinois' defense is currently 113th in total defense.
113th.
113th in total defense. So there's been an amazing drop off since last season. Nebraska, just in case you're wondering, Nebraska is 37th in total defense. I know that people have all these advanced stats and stuff, but I'm not that good at math anymore because of the freaking brain injury. And I like sticking with these anyway. What were we? Number one against the rush when we came into this game against Michigan?
No, we weren't number one against the rush.
Like second or third?
I think maybe somewhere like that.
Okay,
Michigan,
well now we're 15th, which is still not terrible, but that that's still better than
and I think
a hell of a lot better than we were.
we've avoided talking about one thing too that gives me a lot of concern, and that's the fact that Deshaun Singleton is it sounds like he's probably done for the season.
Does it? I thought he was out for a couple games.
No, it sounds like that injury could be more severe than that. And I'm saying could. They haven't. Nobody's ruled him out. But then our Reimer. He didn't play.
He's taken to the hospital apparently.
Taken to the hospital, in the morning before the game. Some of those I don't. Those are two important players on that defense. I don't know that they weren't going to make a difference in the outcome of the game, but certainly not having them and not having them in a game for Illinois. Illinois, what we know about them is that their defense is really struggling. We ought to be able to move the ball on Illinois, and their quarterback is very prone to turning the ball over. So who's going to play with the most want to? Who's going to play with the most heart? Which team is going to lay it out there on the line from the opening snap to the final whistle? I think ultimately that's what it's going to come down to.
Todd, guess where Illinois is nationally ranked in turnover margin.
Where are they?
Guess. Come on, guess.
Last. 100.
No. They're close.
102nd.
Okay, where do you think Nebraska is?
I have no clue.
They're both tied for 125th nationally in turnover margin. So there you go. That evens out. I mean, if you're a guy that goes, "Oh, what are we going to turn the ball over?" Well, we're apparently just as shitty at it as they are. Let's look up some more. Illinois scoring offense. Where do you think that is?
John, I don't pay a rat's ass a bit of attention. I mean, I just pluck. I'll just pluck numbers. Their total scoring offense or total offense?
Scoring offense. That's what counts.
89th.
No.
Second.
105th. Nebraska's is 122nd. So this should be a barn burner of a defensive struggle. I think our defense is much better than they are, but we have to, have to get in a groove, I think.
This could end up being a game that gets kind of wild. I mean, it really could, depending upon, what. It could be a game that gets kind of crazy and wild. Who knows? So, there's a couple of comments here that we marked that I want to bring up, and we can talk a little bit about them. Cilantro says, in the history of Nebraska looking helpless in football games, is this the most helpless they've looked? I don't know that it's the most helpless they've looked. They were just kicked in the nuts the whole game. But more importantly, they just couldn't match up. I would say if you want to talk about a team that looked helpless, I'll take some of those Bo Pelini teams that absolutely melted down in the second half. You're totally helpless. They didn't know what to do. I think that the defense, for the most part, knew what they were supposed to do. They just couldn't execute it, and they couldn't get it
Yeah.
done. Now, there were quite a few mental mistakes that were made on both sides of the ball, and that's frustrating. But I don't. I guess cilantro. I kind of disagree with that word helpless. I think that there have been other times maybe that they've looked more helpless.
The jet sweeps against Wisconsin, the Big Ten title game, that was, the whole nation kept using the phrase Wisconsin scored again for like 2 or 3 years. Wait a minute. And then there's the 70-10 game at Texas Tech, a game I never bring up because I had drank a lot of beer and that game, and we were at a friend's house, and my wife said the magic words at that time to me is, "You don't need another beer." And my wife and I don't talk about that game because it's just one of those things that you don't bring up, or you're right back in the doghouse so you were that night. So 70-10 Texas Tech. I mean, come on. Go ahead.
Tiger Shark Diver says Malachi is going to transfer if he doesn't start getting targeted. He's got to get open to get targeted.
Yeah.
When he's been out on the field, I've watched him. He's not getting open. He's got to figure that out. And again, this is all rumor, so I wouldn't print it in a publication, but rumor has it that he's one of those guys that hasn't quite figured out that you go hard on every play in practice. And maybe he needs to work a little bit more on his abilities to get separation from defenders. And again, that's I don't know that for sure, but that's what I've heard.
Here's Caleb Board. He says Todd is right. You just take that with you, Todd.
One time I was right. Yeah. I saw Way Up High and I marked it, and I don't want to kind of go back in there. I don't know if it was Roger Moore or Colin. It was one of those guys mentioned something about what about Michigan, they kicked our ass, it's done. And I'm paraphrasing. What about the South Stadium expansion? If you had to have been living under a rock if you didn't hear about the plan for stadium expansion, $400+ million expansion. That's going to involve knocking down, imploding South Stadium and reconstructing it. And Trev Alberts, in his pitch, has said that he's going to ask for mercy from the fans and their trust. And I don't know if you were a person who has had seats in the South Stadium for 25, 30 years, and if you get a letter in the mail that says it's unfortunate, but we're not going to be able to give you tickets to watch Nebraska play for a season or two, how are you going to feel about that?
I don't know. Do we have any commenters that are in that situation? We should go find some people, Todd, and talk to them and see how they feel about it. You know more people than I do. Go find some people. You're all over the state of Nebraska. You're talking to people every day that are Nebraskans. I talk to computers mostly.
Yeah, and I don't. I haven't talked to many people that work in South Stadium or sit in South Stadium. Never mind me. I tell you what, this is the bandwagon I was on. When they did the last kind of overhaul on the east and the west sides, they added the club boxes or whatever you want to call them on the east side and built that new level up. Why didn't we just build a new stadium at that time? They moved the State Fair out to Grand Island. They had all of that property that Innovation Campus has taken over now, which, that's a good use of that property. But right there was a spot to build a new football stadium. But apparently we are too wedded to the idea of the 100-year history of Memorial Stadium that
Todd, if Notre Dame Cathedral burns down, you don't just say, "Oh, fuck that thing," and build another cathedral. It's Notre Dame Cathedral. I'm not talking about Notre Dame, the team, the college. I'm talking about the thing in France?
Paris.
This is our cathedral, the state of Nebraska's holy cathedral. You don't just go, she's seen some days and then walk away from it. Come on. There's the pillars, Todd. Some tradition has to remain. because everything else is getting torn away.
I don't know. I've been in quite a few college football stadiums, and the only one that um, I would say that ranks with a miserable place to watch a football game at the same level as Memorial Stadium is Ohio Stadium. And they're both old hulks that, people just continue to hang on. But anyway, this new stadium expansion, my dad turned 85 on Sunday, the day after the game. And, he said, well, he says, I wonder if we'll still have our seats. And I said, Dad, I keep hoping that I'm going to be sitting with you somewhere in a couple, in 2025, 2026. I hope we have some seats together. But I would guess that South Stadium people are kind of wondering, but I think it's a good move to update the stadium. It's got to be a better place to watch a game.
Caleb Ward gives us a super chat. I will watch for free through the hole where South Stadium used to be, and I will let go as many red balloons as I want from outside. Remember when you were younger, Todd, you used to hear all them stories from them old guys about, I used to watch through the knot holes at the end of the stadium and all that shit.
Yeah.
Well, that Caleb Ward, he's a dedicated guy.
Well, I used to sit in the knot hole seats at the end zone at old Clyde Williams Field up at Iowa State when I was a little shaver. So cost us $1 to get in.
Here's one. Here is one. I saw this comment from people on Twitter.
Yeah.
Most of the week I check Twitter. I follow Twitter, and people were saying, shouldn't we spend $450 million on nil? Well, we are going to have to get our nil shit together. And put it this way, the stadium needs something done to it. It needs to be renovated. I think everybody knows that. And when we look at, shouldn't we just spend money on nil? We're looking at the right now. We're not looking at 20 years from now. And 20 years from now, the world's going to be a lot bit different place than it is now, particularly with college football. You couldn't have predicted the Pac-10, the Pac-12 would be dead. If somebody 20 years ago said, Stanford and that other fucking college full of geeks will be in the ACC, we'd all gone, you're out of your mind. But here we are. So they still need to do this. And the nil still needs to be figured out for Nebraska, because they're going to raise $225 million from private donations. They're probably going to have to raise more than that, I'm guessing. Nebraska does have wealthy people that contribute to that. But let me ask you this. The one thing that bothers me when the nil stuff comes up is this. It's always, and this bothers me in general about society and our politics and who we are as human beings, but we always tend to look at this as that's their problem over there. Like, why don't those millionaires contribute millions of dollars to nils so we can buy some good quarterbacks? Well, you have your way. You can contribute to nil too. We could get better offensive linemen if we all bought Pipeline Jerky, or honestly probably donated to them. I think the 1890 Collective is having a huge issue because of the people that run it and the people that are associated with it. And at some point, that is going to get straightened out. It's either going to get straightened out by the people that are surrounding that issue, or by the government, or by lawsuits, but it's going to get straightened out. And probably down the road, maybe 2 years and maybe 5 years, nils will be more closely associated with universities than with private nonprofit organizations. Because at some point, this probably has to get reined in by some kind of legislation, some kind of law, something, you would hope. And that's probably going to bring it into the universities, and that's probably going to make it much more controllable. And I think Nebraska, as a university and as an athletic department, has always run a very good athletic department. People in charge of it, people in charge of it have not always been the best leaders, and we can name them, but they have, as a whole, I can tell you from working with universities across the nation, our athletic department is extremely well run. But, we have a lot of stuff to figure out at Nebraska to become competitive. And the problem that we have right now is, in terms of us, in terms of you guys watching, Todd with his constant complaining about, I want it now, We want it now, and that's the issue. Is there has to be a longer term vision to this. The last long term vision turned out to be a complete con, and I don't think this one is. And it really has to be a longer term vision that we have about what we're going to do with the football program that is the ego of our state, whether we like it or not. I talked long enough, Todd.
No, John, I think you make a lot of really good points there with that. And, you pay a lot more attention to nil than I do. People are going to start asking pretty soon, Todd, what the hell do you pay any attention to? But, I really hope, I wish the NCAA would step up with this nil thing. Maybe they're just, we bashed the NCAA for years. I don't want the federal government getting involved in this. They'll mess this up to no end. It will be a disaster if the federal government gets involved. So we have a national organization that is supposedly designed to govern college athletics. They shoved this down the river hoping that somebody else would take responsibility for it. Now they need to suck it up, and they need to have some kind of across the board expectations for nil, and so we can move forward. John, there's one I want to throw up here that I skipped over earlier, and this is kind of back to some of our personnel. Adam Martin says, so Teddy got more snaps and didn't look good at all. Afraid the injuries have sapped him. Teddy, one of our writers, John mentioned Slack earlier, one of our writers that really pays a lot of attention to the offensive and the defensive lines and has quite a bit of knowledge about that kind of play and whatnot. He asked basically the same question. Will Teddy ever be able to regain, what he had coming in as a gangly, skinny, freshman offensive lineman? And boy, I hope that he can, but maybe he's a year or two away from being where eventually he can. I hope he can get there. But yeah, I share those concerns that you do as well.
Okay, wait. Starred. My God. Okay. Tiger Shark Driver says happy birthday to your dad, Todd. Did Doyle have a birthday recently?
Well, he had the birthday that he wanted. He was with his wife of 62 years.
Oh my God.
They had a nice dinner together and yeah. So
Dion Pryor says none of us can afford anything. Do you know what we did in college when we couldn't afford anything, Todd? Do you remember?
We did. We drank really cheap beer, and a lot of it.
To make up for the fact that we couldn't afford it, we drank a lot of it. What else did we do?
Pitchers at Stooges.
What else did we do? What else did we do?
Your memory must be better than mine. I don't remember.
Sold blood?
Some people did. I did not. I did not sell blood. I did drug studies. Drug
studies? Yep. Harris Labs, I believe it was.
Harris Labs, you betcha.
See, Dion, there's all sorts of ways to contribute. You could sell your blood and then contribute that money to the athletic department for the renovation, because they need to raise the money, or you could contribute to a nil outfit. We should start our own fucking nil thing. That's what we should do.
I'll tell you what, I'm loving this here at the end. I'm seeing Falstaff and Schaefer's and Keystone and Old Milwaukee. No, fellas, that was all way too expensive for us. We were in college back in the days of the plain label beer.
Yeah, the generic beer.
White can, black block letters, beer. That's what we drank. I honestly think, John, I could be wrong. I think we paid no more than $2 a six-pack for that stuff.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I think we're paying like $1.75 for a six-pack.
Oh my God, Mickey Big Mouth. Ugh, that's a dangerous thing. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. Dion says, I want it before I die, John. I don't disagree with that. You know, I'm kind of in that position. Caleb Ward comes back and says, but isn't the university paying for the renovation? They can't directly feed the nil directory. That's correct. They can't directly be in charge of nil because that's just how the rules are right now. University paying for the renovation, 450 million. I mean, let's be serious. $450 million. Normally, when you're doing construction, you're going to have cost overruns. The price of concrete's going to go through the roof in another year. And this is going to be a $600 million project. And then everybody's going to pretend like we didn't know this. And then when they go, oh, it really cost $600 million, we're all going to go, oh, look, they can't do anything right, when this happens all the time with construction. 225 million of it is slated to be raised by private donations. 50 million supposed to come from some kind of like loan from the academic side. And I'm guessing that, you know, they'll be raising much more than that in donations. But yeah, they, you know, I'm sure they might look at the state for funding. Maybe they'll legalize marijuana, Todd, and put a tax on the gummies.
They did say that they are considering going to the state for some funding. So we'll see. So
Jack the Ripper a while back said, you two are so thick, Nebraska will never be really good until they switch to a Nike sponsorship. Only Nike teams can win. You know, I've heard this for a long time. And I don't, maybe that's true. We've tried everything else. So what the hell? I mean,
we were winning when we were wearing Converse.
Marnav comes in and says, what's a new stadium cost? $1 billion? Easily. Probably. I mean, if you look at the fact that put it this way, before you could build anywhere, you have to do 8 years of environmental studies. And what's that going to impact? I mean, maybe not Nebraska, but pretty much everywhere else on the planet. And I'm sure people would object to it, and you'd have to do that. So by the time that you get up, just to get the land, look at the land and say what was there before, because you're environmentally responsible for cleanup if there was anything bad there before. And then that's one reason why you don't build on new things and you build on your shit you already own. But by the time you've done all that and you've planned it and you've constructed it and you got all the millionaires that are going to give you $1 billion and had every one of them have their input, I mean, it's easily $1 billion and a half. So yeah, billion. It's
wasn't
so easy.
SoFi Stadium, wasn't that $5 billion out in California?
I don't know. That big ball they built was like $2 billion in Las Vegas or some damn thing.
Dion, hams. Well, I had hams 2 weeks ago at the press box with my dad a week before his birthday. We had tall boys. And just bear with me. Hams beer, Land of Sky Blue Waters. Those commercials were the best. John told the story about the Hams bear. We had a friend that had a Hams bear costume and would wear it around when we were in school. But I found something out. My dad, when we ordered these Hams tall boys for $2.50 at the press box in Lincoln. And I said, Dad, God, I remember when I was a little kid, I remember Hams beer around our house. And he says, well, there's a reason why. And he says, because your Aunt Maggie at the bar that she ran in Adair, Iowa, that was her bar beer, was Hams. That's all she served. And said, and then she would leave 6-packs out back for us when we weren't, before we were old enough to be in a bar. But I guess I've always had this fascination with hams. And, you know, when I find it, when I see it on a shelf, I buy Hams beer. I guess that's my little nostalgia.
Aaron Keene wants to know, Jesus, how old are you, Todd?
I am 61 years old.
Yeah. Same here. Linda Wilkins is here. She finally showed up. I was wondering how you were doing, Linda. Tiger Shark Driver says some of our donors are fed up, by the way. I can imagine they are. There's been little results for their money, and the whole thing is kind of I don't know, from everything I hear in the background, it's still kind of I don't want to say sketchy. Sketchy is not the word. Touchy is the word because of the people involved in it, I guess. And I wish I think the thing is whenever you get a lot of money, apparently your ego gets as big as the money you are worth. And that, you have to, if you're going to put it this way, if you're going to run like a nonprofit, let's say, and you're going to go out and collect money with a bunch of people, you have to be really, really, really good at smoozing them. And that means putting them before you is really how that's going to work. Like me, I'd probably be terrible at this because, I just say fuck too much. And then, there you go. A lot of people don't like that. But one of the things you have to do in order to be successful is recognize people's needs and then fulfill them and then take their money. Not take their money and then, don't do a damn thing for their egos or the stroking, because I don't know. This doesn't seem that hard, Todd.
Well, I want to go back to a football question. This one, I think.
Okay, you good.
Does anyone think Jake? Well, we'll come back. Does anybody think J.J. McCarthy is overrated? Nope. I thought J.J. McCarthy, I think he's a talented player. I think he's good. He made some throws. Well, he made a throw where he was going to his left and zipped it. He zipped it. He was going north. The team was headed north. That might have been a touchdown pass. If it wasn't a touchdown, it put him close. My goodness gracious, that was a hell of a throw. He's athletic. He moves around. He's calm. And he apparently has enough pull. And maybe it's in his NIL contract that his girlfriend gets to come down on the field and they're smooching on the bench. I mean, what is that? Come on.
The same girlfriend who got her ass grabbed by his dad.
Do you remember I didn't hear that.
Yeah, that was like 2-3 years ago. They have cameras everywhere. Apparently, cameras caught his dad grabbing one of his girlfriend's buttocks or something like that.
I'll bet you we don't see Travis Kelce smooching Taylor Swift down on the field before the game's over.
Oh. Okay, let's see. I starred some. Don Dre says, I believe in 5 years, nil will disappear. This could be correct. Because in 5 years, athletics might be ruled as employees and they will have no need for nil because they'll just be directly paid just like NFL players, except it probably at a lower level. So if you think that any of this is going back to the way it used to be, it's not. It's not ever going back to a simple game where amateurs played it. And by the way, why do we think these guys have to be amateurs? Where did that attitude ever come from, Todd? Is this the romanticism about, they want to be here?
Well, and that's because, it was part of the college ideal, the whole student athlete thing, the Olympic concept, for years and years, all of that was supposed to be amateur sports. And then people started exploiting it and taking advantage. It was the Russians and the East Germans that did it all. They're the ones that screwed it all up. John, I see you starred this one. Did you guys make lawn chairs with old pull tabs? Did you have one, John? I did have something in my day. Do you remember the beer can hats where you'd cut the side label of a beer can and somebody crocheted them all together? They looked like a bucket hat. Did you remember those?
Yes.
I had a PBR one.
Hey, there you go. James Boardman with CornNation long snapper nil. Oh, I'm going to look into this. Avery Brundage, Blaine Cole says Avery Brundage is spinning in his grave. Probably is.
Yeah, I'll bet you old Avery is. He was a corrupt son of a bitch, too.
Marcus Rystrom says, John, how do you feel about our bowl chances? I know Todd thinks we can make it. You know what? I think it all comes down to Friday night. Yeah. I mean, not all of it, but a lot of it comes down to this game Friday night against Illinois. We're going to play 4 teams in the next, the next 4 games are against teams that I don't want to say we should beat because anything is possible with any of these teams in the Big Ten West, but they're certainly laying out there for the taking. If we can play good football, tackle well, get some turnovers, then we can get 4 victories and get to 6 wins. I put it at 63%. That's the number. I spoke to the universe just there, and that's the number I pulled out of the universe.
63% chance that we can make a bowl game.
Yes.
I think there's 4 wins out there. I think they can find 4. But you know what? We may get run too. We may have seen our last victory. You know, I don't know. I don't know what to expect. I'd like to think they're better. We'll play better, but I agree with you, John. We're going to find out Friday night.
Are there any Clay Castledirt says, are there any good candidates for the NU president position? I have, that's an academic thing mostly.
Yeah, I don't know.
Other than me, I can't think of anybody.
Have you applied? I was going to send a letter in so I can get a rejection back.
No, I haven't applied. I have things to do. You know what I did today, Todd?
What did
I
you
had
do?
I had more conversations with Chat GPT than I did actual human beings. This is the difference between my life and yours.
I was being impressed in Stromsburg, Nebraska, and David City, Nebraska today. So there you go. Saw quality education, public education, and non-public education taking place in the state of Nebraska.
Brian Cochran comes back and says, "This is the universe speaking. Forget your bowl chances." Brian, why you got to be so mean?
Why you have to be so mean? Taylor Swift can't get rid of her. Can't get away from Taylor Swift.
You know what else happened in the Big Ten West? Caden McNamara.
Yeah, I'm going to throw. Yeah. Let's throw this up.
Okay. Dion Pryor says Iowa is fucked, and
they've got Cooper DeJean. Cooper DeJean is going to single-handedly take Iowa to a bowl game this year. He's going to return punts like he did the other night against Michigan State for touchdowns. Mark my words, he will have offensive touchdowns. He's going to have special teams touchdowns. He will be a one-man wrecking crew for the University of Iowa. Save Brian Ferentz's job. Hawkeyes, bowl game. Don't even have to talk about it anymore.
Cade McNamara got injured this weekend. Probably, he's out for the season, isn't he?
He's done.
Yeah. And what else happened across the Big Ten? PJ Fleck was on the radio up here, and he said he made a comment on sports radio that if Minnesota wanted to keep guys like Darius Taylor, I think the young running back that was leading the nation in rushing, if they want to keep those players, that they need to get their nils stuff together and need to start contributing. And people just went nuts on him. They have beat the shit out of him about that. He's just deflecting because he sucks. And Minnesota's lost, okay? We don't want to beat Minnesota. Because I saw one comment that said, well, he shouldn't say that after losses. He should say that after he's won a couple games. Well, if he said that after they won a couple games, the motherfuckers would have come back and said, we're fine. We don't need to. We're winning games. So you get put into a position where there's no winning if you say stuff like that as a coach. And the fact is, PJ Fleck is right. If we're not going to play in the nil game, and if you're not going to participate, then you can kind of listen. I know that in the Major League Baseball, I don't follow it, but the teams with the biggest salaries don't always win because they're not that greatly managed. But the teams that are going to have their nil shit together going forward are going to be the most competitive teams.
Yeah.
And the honest to God truth about college football is this is a select group of schools, and it always have been. It's changed from decade to decade. And where Nebraska needs to get, like in the next 3 years, not next week, they need to get so that they're in the top 4 or 5 teams in the Big Ten next year.
Nebraska
have the structure.
They need to position themselves so they're in the top 48. They need to be one of the most. They need to be consistently in the top 48 because it's going to be those schools that eventually will have their own little world of college football, and that's where Nebraska needs to be. Here's one side, guys. Nice to see a Cyclone fan here. Nebraska hasn't been I used to be a contender. It hasn't quite been 20 years. We haven't had we had some good teams back in the Pelini days.
2009.
Yeah. yeah, that's not 20 years, And I'm a Cy guy too. I was conceived a Cyclone. I went to a lot of Iowa State games, and Iowa State had their 15 minutes of fame with Coach Campbell, and now unfortunately they're coming back to earth, which is frustrating. I'd hope they'd be able to sustain that a little longer.
Wait, I got to take this one. Tiger Shark Diver says it's always another year for us for 30 fucking years. Okay. Listen, I live in Minnesota. The Minnesota Vikings has existed since 1962, and there hasn't been a single year in their entire history they haven't let their fans down. Not a single year. I mean, I realize it's been a while for Nebraska, and it might be a few more years, but what else are you going to do? You're going to not be a fan? That's always a choice. I guess I'm doing this because I'll always be there. Probably a mental illness at this point.
Well, John, hey, we're at a minute. We're an hour and 6 minutes.
Oh,
wrap this up with Husker Chuck.
Okay, Husker Chuck says, does Brian Ferentz offense need to average 24 points a game, or do all the special teams and defensive scores help him out? They do help him out.
They do help him out.
And number two, honestly, if any of us actually believe that Brian Ferentz is going to get fired because his team doesn't get 325 points or 25 points a game this year, we are deluding ourselves. He is not going to be fired. If they win 8 games, he is not going to be fired. They might hire an interim AD that comes in and fires Kirk Ferentz and then immediately resigns 2 weeks later from their job.
They have an interim AD right now.
Oh my gosh.
And it is a female.
Okay, well, Kirk, go ahead.
And there's been a lot of animosity directed towards women's sports at Iowa in the last 15 years. So it could be the revenge of the female Hawkeye.
That sounds intriguing. That sounds like a Netflix special. Okay, we have okay, Sam Roberts. I don't do anything with uniforms. I mean, come on. I'm in IT. I barely dress myself. Whenever we go out for anything, I walk up to my wife and I say, "Is this good enough for you, my beauty?"
I am a uniform freak, and don't mess with Nebraska's uniforms. Don't mess with them. Don't look like some clown shit Oregon team or somebody that doesn't have an identity like Arizona State and teams like that. I love Nebraska's uniform. Don't mess with them. Keep the black off of them. Get off my lawn.
Yeah. Okay. We're 8 minutes. We're almost 9 minutes past our bedtime.
Yeah.
Aaron Keene asked, favorite band, John. I don't have favorites of anything. I don't understand how you can have favorites. Because there's so many, I mean, when you look at music, there are so many different variations. There are so many different genres. There's so many different things to pick from. How can you pick a favorite? Whatever my favorite is whatever mood I'm in at the time. There you go. What's your favorite movie, Todd?
My favorite movie?
See how that is?
I was running through my head. What's my favorite band? Jeez. Favorite movie, honestly, is Rocky. The original Rocky.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Or Officer and a Gentleman.
Well, that was
kind
a
of
good
a
movie,
sucker
yeah.
for that one. That was a good movie.
I've always said my favorite movie was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
That was good.
And we're gonna go, and someday I'll tell you guys the story of how when I was 16 years old, I lived alone in Tucson, Arizona for the summer and spent most of that summer actually working in a mental ward at a VA hospital. But that's a story for another night. We're gonna go.
Top 10, baby. Top 10 Tiger Shark Diver. Shawshank, top 10.
Yeah, that is an excellent movie.
Yeah, John, you better hang it up. We're mumbling.
Okay. Good night, Todd.
Good night, John.